Hi, everyone. We're just waiting a couple more minutes for the last few people to log in and just make sure that their links are working. It's wonderful to see all of you, at least all of your names and some great pictures. I'll introduce myself again momentarily when we begin officially, but my name is Rabbi Adam Drucker. Some of you, your names I recognize from the session that I did last week. Some of you I know very, very well, either through Masa, either through my role working for Young Judea Year Course. So thank you for all those people that have logged in. We're going to be running this session called Hakol Yeh Beseder. I'm going to give it over to Tamar soon to start us off officially. I'm just now talking to kind of pass the time. That's all I'm doing.
It's great. I think we're just going to start now. I'm just going to say a few words, and then Adam, the microphone is back to you. And I think when you start, even for a second, it would be great just to see everyone's faces. If you're in the, how do you say, if you're ready to unveil your camera. Hi, Yoel. איזה כיף, מה שלומך?
בסדר גמור.
Alex, it's great. Getting to see everyone one by one, and then you can turn off your cameras again if it makes you feel better, but I'm sure that you're going to want to have this conversation with the Rabbi Drucker face to face. If anyone else is here and can hear me, Natalie, Gabriel, Andre, Liora, Deborah, Alessandra, Victoria, and Shira, we would love to see you and to see that you're here with us. Hi, can we see your face for just a second, Gabriela? Hi, Shira, great to see you.
Hello.
Ooh. This
Hi.
makes a whole big difference. I appreciate this very much. Natalie, it's the three of you. Hi, everyone. So great. I'm just going to say a few words, and then I'm going to introduce Rabbi Druckman. So I'm Tamara. I work for Masaf for the educational department. And we're happy to have this event. We're having it at the same time in 4 different languages. We're having it in English, in Spanish, in French, and in Russian. And what it's very impressive is that this is a whole new situation to all of us. Like, none of us prepared for Leil HaSeder this way. We didn't think we're going to be by ourselves or not celebrating with friends and family. And it was very important for us to take this time and to prepare, not only about talking about what you do for the Seder itself, but also how it's going to look, how we're going to feel, how we're going to, I know, other spiritual things regarding it, but that's going to be already for Rabbi Drucker to continue. But it's great to see all of you here, and we have an hour. How long do we have? Okay.
Yeah, an hour and a bit. We'll see how we go.
Okay, amazing. So I'm happy to introduce Rabbi Drucker. Maybe you're going to do it better than I will and can say what we're going to be doing tonight. And I'm just going to put my microphone on mute.
Thank you so much, Tamar. So hello to all of you. My name is Rabbi Adam Drucker. I'll be running the English-speaking session this evening of Hakol Yeh Beseder, which in English means everything's going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. And it's a play on words, obviously, because Beseder means be fine, and Seder, Leil HaSeder, whoever came up with it should win the equivalent of the name prize that you get for being great at giving things names. So my name is Rabbi Drucker. I originally come from the UK, as you can hear, made Aliyah 4 years ago with my family. I now live in Kiryat Gat, and I work for Young Judea Year Course as the rabbi and director of experiential education for the program, which is under Masa. So it's wonderful to see all of you. I do see some familiar faces from the class I gave last week and from members and faculty members from the program that I work for. So thank you so much for all of your support. Just to give you a bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to share my screen with you. As Tamar said, we're living in times which are, everything is different. Everything has changed very much in terms of the way we live our lives, the way we interact with people, the way we interact with friends, the way we interact with family. And we're on the cusp, we're on the precipice of a Jewish festival, which is very much a social festival, a time spending with friends, a time spending with family. And the question is, really, the central question is, how can we make this festival, how can we make Leil HaSeder, Seder night, the Passover Seder, something meaningful, something which we can still gain some value from in a time when we are isolated. And we're going to explore that together. Hopefully we can we can dialogue, we can speak, and you can ask questions, and we'll go from there. And I'll take you through a few different nice ideas that I've found. And hopefully by the end, we can maybe understand what it means to go from a feeling of sometimes isolation to what real freedom means, which is the central theme of Pesach itself. I'm going to send a link now on the chat. You don't have to really worry about it now. I'm going to be focusing using a really wonderful Haggadah, which has the Hebrew text and also English. The Haggadah itself also has incredible ideas for all ages, ways to engage not only yourselves, but if you are happening to be sharing a Seder with someone or from anyone else around the world, it has dozens and dozens of different activities and ideas. So if you want to receive the Haggadah, it's completely free. There's a Google form you can fill out and you'll receive the Haggadah. And that's what I'm going to be using and sharing with you today. In addition, there's a really great website for Haggadah, which has the great name haggadah.com, which I just sent. Actually, I'm going to send it again, apologies, called haggadah.com, which is a kind of a make your own Haggadah website. So there's two ways you could use that website. Either you can go and make your own Haggadah, or there are a bunch of different Haggadah that you can choose from that are already made. And there's the whole gamut of different types of Haggadah, from traditional to liberal to secular to just creative to comedic. So if you want to have an exploration there to see and have a look and see what Haggadah you can find there, again, it would be a great way to enrich your Seder. So I'm going to bring you over to my screen in a few moments' time, in 3, 2, when my computer decides to work. 1, here we go. Here's my screen. Hello, my screen. This is my screen, everyone. So as I said before, this evening's session is called Hakol Yihiyeh Beseder. Please feel free to interrupt me at any point during this session together. I know there's a bunch of us in here, but either you can click the raise your hand button, as I'm sure now you've gotten used to, or just kind of begin speaking. If you have any questions or things you want me to clarify or anything like that, please feel free to interrupt me at any point, and I'll happily answer and discuss anything with you. So the idea is for us to kind of reflect together why or how Pesach Seder is going to be different. Not only what we can do to still make it meaningful together, but also to think, are there inherent themes? Are there inherent ideas within the Passover, within the Seder night, that we can really use to give us some light, some inspiration, some spirituality during these difficult times? Now, I've put here, I would say, and there are 6 tips, 6 things that I would say before we get into anything, before we go into the Seder plate, before we go into the Seder itself, before we even begin to talk about what Passover looks like. Here are my 5, sorry, I can count, I promise, 5 top tips for the Seder night in this time. Okay, if just maybe by a show of hands, perhaps, by clicking the raise your hand feature, who is planning on or thinks they're going to be having Passover Seder by themselves? There's a few there. And who's having Passover Seder just with their kind of immediate family or close friends? Who I suppose we can count as family? Okay, wonderful. So look, that anyway could be maybe different to what many of us are used to. Some of us are maybe used to having Seder in a kind of with friends, with extended family, and already that's going to be a big change for us. There are 5 tips here that I just wanted to kind of bring out at the very beginning for us to kind of understand, well, what can we do to make this at least manageable, easier, and something we can look forward to. And let me see if I can remember the very vague points I put out here, but prep. the more preparation that you put into a Seder, whether it be by yourself or with just your immediate family, the more you're going to get out of it. Okay, coming to sessions like these, doing your own research, looking up Haggadot, thinking of ways that you can engage people around you, the more preparation you do, the better, the more meaningful your Seder is going to be, particularly Seder night. Okay, Seder night, which is all about telling a story, all about sharing our shared story, sharing our shared experience as a people, as a nation, that if you could think about your favorite TV show, your favorite movie, your favorite play, the more preparation that's gone into by the people in creating that play, creating that TV show, the memorizing of lines, the time that goes into creating those sets, the time that goes into how each character is going to interplay with one another. The same too here with this Passover Seder, another type of retelling of a story. And so the preparation is essentially this session that we're having today. Another idea is sharing across the world. And some of us are tuning into this from Israel, some from the US, some from Canada, from the UK, from all over the world. I do apologize if I missed out your country. I do apologize. But we are connected throughout the whole world. And one of the wonderful things that I know many of you are aware of in this day and age, particularly with what's going on, is in a time when we feel isolated, we have the tools to still feel connected. And an example could be, maybe, that if you have family spread around the world, is asking members of your family to maybe share a story, an idea, a song, a recipe that they can give to you before Seder night begins. And that even though during that time you won't necessarily be sitting together, it will be as if there's a feeling of that person who may not be with you in the here and now still with you. I know for my program, for example, we're asking family members to maybe send and record themselves singing a different song, or sending a message they want to share with their participants who are still on their program. So you could maybe just reach out on your family WhatsApp group, which I know for my family in particular is far, far more active than it's been ever, and to kind of tap into that and to ask people, okay, what's your favorite part of Passover? Your favorite part of Seder? Is that memory that happened 2 years ago when Uncle Stephen fell asleep and poured the grape juice onto his lap, and we all laughed, and we had such a wonderful time at our Uncle Stephen, who was so clumsy. And sharing those stories and sharing those moments in this time can bring us together. The third point there is experimental dinner. Now, a part of this presentation we're going to share with you are lists and lists of different recipes to try and different things you can try and cook at this time of year. And whether you are Sephardi, whether you are Ashkenazi, whether you are a Ashkenazi, and you want to try different foods, I'll share those pieces with you. The truth is, the dinner itself, there is, unlike the actual Seder, where we have matzah, we have maror, and there are things you are required to eat, the dinner can be anything. And in my personal opinion, particularly if it's difficult to find the right ingredients at this time, or you can't really go out, just kind of make something that warms you up inside, that feels easy and it's good to make. Comfort food would be a really, really great idea. I'm picturing now some kind of matzah lasagna with cheese. That would be my go-to. But the idea being, you don't have to drive yourself mad with that part of the Seder. Okay, even if you want to put on you want to focus just on like the meaningful side of the piece, on the ideas that we can share. So you can take a step back. The next one is I've called couch vibes. And this is probably my favorite excuse every single Seder night. That for hundreds and hundreds of years, Seder night was carried out essentially sitting on pillows, sitting on cushions. We all know the part of the Seder where when we drink wine and we eat certain foods during the Seder, we're told we have to lean. And when people lean during Seder night, they kind of sometimes maybe do it like an awkward, it's like kind of uncomfortable. This is not really fun for me to lean in such a way and drink or eat. The real idea of leaning, which we'll get to, is just to be comfortable, to feel free, to feel that there's no one judging you, there's no pressure. I'm going to put my feet on the table, my elbows on the table, I'm going to eat, I'm going to drink how I want to eat and how I want to drink. And so in reality, although, right, there is something also kind of honorable to have Seder by the table. And again, I'm not poo-pooing that whatsoever. Having Seder at your couch, with friends, even by yourself with a glass of wine, there's something that kind of brings out this idea of being free, of reciting something, of doing something, because that's how I want to do it. And the final one I've called it Haggadah Gagadah. The reason I called it that was because you should be able to use as many or all different types of Haggadah. There are so many. Don't feel like you need to connect just to, this is my Haggadah, this is what I'm going to follow. But feel free to use everything at your disposal. Even if you don't have a Haggadah, particularly a Haggadah at home. Well, there's the two websites that I sent you. One of them has every type of Haggadah you could ever think of that are still being created now, each with its own theme. For example, there's a Haggadah that links the Passover Seder with modern day refugee crises around the world. And there's a Haggadah that has jokes and skits and comics all the way through. And there's a Haggadah that kind of focuses on issues that are, even now there's a Haggadah that's already been created that kind of is specifically for this day and age with Corona. So take a look at those. Don't commit to one. Feel free just to kind of explore and use a book, use a Haggadah that you feel comfortable with. I'm going to stop there just for one moment before I continue. Are there any questions, clarifications, concerns, anything that has popped up whilst I have been blabbing on for the last 5-10 minutes or so? Wonderful. Okay, I shall carry on. So let's go into the Seder itself. I'm going to open up these pieces now just for discussions. Again, some of these pieces you may be aware of, but it's always good to have a refresher. And we're starting off with the Seder plate. Actually, let me stop this. I'm going to go back in and make sure that the sound is shared with you. Here we go. The Seder plate. Oh. Wonderful. I'm just going to give my editorial on this. Again, I'll share this video with you. It's a great reminder. It's a great refresher for everything that goes on your Seder plate. Just a couple of pieces. First of all, some of you may have different customs as to where you put the different items on the Seder plate. And now is actually a good time for me to kind of just put this out there, that Seder night itself is probably, and I heard this from a camp director in the US, he said that Seder night was the very first informal hadracha pa'ula, the very first informal educational exercise that we're told in Jewish tradition that it's now an imperative on you, generation after generation after generation, lahagid, to tell this story. And not just tell this story because it's interesting or that it's fun. I mean, it is those things, but you have to relive it. And to relive the story, you need to engage every single one of your senses. And so this idea of a Seder plate, of having that physical reminder right in the middle of the table, and not only is it there to look at, but it's there to be played with, it's there to eat, it's there to taste, and then that taste, that touching, is then supposed to evoke some kind of emotion in itself, is part and parcel of this interactive experience. So I just want to put out there, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So just answering a question that's come up now, chazeret, horseradish is maror, and lettuce is chazeret. It's a very, very good question. Okay, so in Hebrew, like when I'm doing my online order, horseradish is chazeret. But the Seder night nomenclature, how we refer to everything on Seder night, it gets a bit confusing. So maror is what we would refer to as the horseradish, even though in modern Hebrew it's chazeret. And on the Seder plate, lettuce is the chazeret. Also, okay, so the shank bone also, okay, the shank bone, I'll come to that in a moment, actually. It's an excellent question. I'll come to that in a moment. I'll go through each one. So horseradish, maror, we'll come back to that. Bitterness, life as slaves. I mean, go mad with it, but be careful. Too much can be rather painful. Hard-boiled egg. Here it's written the circle of life. It's also, it helps us remember the festival atmosphere. It was actually called the Korban Chagiga, the holiday sacrifice that was brought in temple times. Not only the circle of life, but the joy that brings, the joy that life brings us. That's a reminder. In terms of preparation for your egg, there's different customs, obviously. Hard-boiled, some people hard-boil it and then roast it as well, because the sacrifice in the temple was also roasted. Okay, karpas. So controversial. Just probably, I mean, in my family, the most controversial part of Seder. I don't think there's anything else that's any more controversial. But so many people use parsley. There are lots of different traditions. Generally, parsley is probably the most well-known tradition to use it because it's green. It kind of grows during spring. Passover being the spring festival. However, there are lots of other traditions. I don't like parsley. I loathe it. So we use radishes. Some people use potatoes. Some people use carrots. It can be any other root vegetable, preferably one that grows in spring, but it doesn't need to be. The next one is, okay, lettuce, okay, chazeret, okay, so I hope that I cleared that up. It can be confusing, but on the Seder plate, it's called chazeret. Also supposed to be bitter, some type of lettuce, which we use for the sandwich later on. Charoset. I'll share with you some different recipes to make charoset. The idea is reminding us of the mortar, of the cement the Jewish people used when they were slaves in Egypt. Another nice activity, okay, again, for people who are either kind of by themselves or with a small family, is to try different types of charoset recipes, unless that is going to kind of, ostracize you from your family and you have to use your family's recipe. But if you're not sure what your family's recipe is, I know it's a very, very personal, proud tradition that many families have, that this is how we make our charoset. I've just seen here that Natalie asked a question. Anyway, you can buy ground almonds in Tel Aviv. I don't know Tel Aviv per se. You should be able to get it in supermarkets at the moment. And they usually sell it in bags by the dried fruit section. Next one. Okay, the shank bone. Okay, good. So Alex asked the question: can the shank bone be a chicken leg or a thigh? It can. It can. There are different traditions. Some people like to use a lamb bone because the Passover sacrifice was a lamb. But using a chicken thigh or a chicken leg is also fine. You would roast it, take the meat off, and place it on the Seder plate. So those are just my little kind of editorials over there. Please feel free, carry on like sending questions into chat, and I will come to them when I see them. Okay. So moving on now to just a kind of another piece, some other ideas to include in the Seder plate. Some of these you may have heard of before, but we want to talk about how can we make this Seder engaging? How can we make it personal? How can we make it unique? And there are lots of different traditions that people might use in addition to the ones you may have grown up with. So I've put over here the 3 pieces of matzah wrapped or covered in a cloth. That's part of the Seder plate. Each matzah, the 3 matzahs will come to you what they represent, but you have those on the table. Also, a container of salt water, which can either represent the tears of the Jewish people, or just that salty sweat, that salty sweat of being slaves, just so salty. Another interesting ones that I've heard before, depending on what other ideas you want to bring to Seder. I know there's a tradition now, which has become popular, of having also an orange on the table, which has come to be a sign and a show of support to LGBTQ communities, that being kind of the representative of zest and love of life, and showing support for people maybe who in this day and age are still kind of finding their place in society, depending on the societies that we live in. Another one that I've seen is also an olive, which is placed also on the table as a sign for peace, to have peace in our time. And another one which I think is also really, really lovely, which you could also incorporate in with reaching out to family, is to ask your family members, what's an item that represents liberation, that represents freedom to you? And it could be have family members that have items or news clippings or an object that kind of speaks of liberation, speaks of being free. Could be you bring if you've made Aliyah, your Teudat Zahut or your Teudat Aliyah, like that is like the idea of being liberated, of feeling free. Or it could be that maybe you have a family member who has, unfortunately who went through their life some form of persecution, and there was some item, some object that for them represented that form of liberation. It could be a book. It could be that when you read a certain book or a certain set of poetry, that makes you feel liberated. And just going back to the olive, many people put an olive on the table as a sign of peace, like a dove holding an olive branch. That this idea of the Seder not being stagnant or set in a particular time. Yes, we are talking about ancient story. Yes, we are talking about the history of our people, but we also very much are looking forward to the future. So I'm going to kind of zip backwards and forwards between the Haggadah. So this one is called the Ayeka Haggadah. In my personal opinion, it's really, really wonderful. It has lots of different activities and questions for you to think about and to do with people of all ages. You can receive a free copy just by filling out, there's a Google form to fill out that I put at the very beginning of the chat. And I'll be going backwards and forwards between this presentation and that Haggadah just to get some nice ideas out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the different parts of the Seder and discuss with you ideas and maybe some options for questions and activities, particularly at a time when, again, it's a Seder that might be different to other Seders. Manishtana, right? How is this Seder going to be different from all other Sedarim we may have had before? And I think one of the pieces that I'm a big fan of is the idea of placing yourself in the here and now. That before you begin any new activity, right? For those of you that maybe practice meditation, or for those of you that kind of are, before you do any form of exercise, you want to kind of be present in that moment. You want to do some kind of warm-up. And the warm-up is there for you, whether it's, again, a warm-up activity for exercise or a warm-up activity for meditation, to get yourself ready. And I would say that there are three kind of questions, and this little bit, again, this is a picture I've taken from the Haggadah, so where are you? Where are you regarding the Passover Seder this year? Where are you in your personal space, your personal life? Right, that us as human beings have created a system to link ourselves to times, link ourselves to certain points in our own personal story. So before you were to even begin your Seder, where are you right now? Now, again, that could link to the craziness that's going on at the moment. It could link to a piece which is more general, right? In terms of where you are as connected to your friends and your family and the people around you. Asking that question now, right before you even begin the Seder, will allow this experience, this Leil HaSeder, this night of order, to hopefully be more meaningful. So when you're looking kind of now, then looking forward to, what are you excited about for this Seder? And this is where we come back to the preparation. Okay, and again, we can discuss this, and I can give you more ideas, but try and give yourself some things you're going to look forward to. Even on a, I mean, I'm going to say this is like on a basic level, but this is not even basic. Even if you want to kind of explore different wines through the Seder, that you want to kind of maybe do some form of tastings and try different wines for each of the 4 glasses that we have during Seder night. For me personally, that would be it. That would be rather exciting. Or are you excited because, you know, this is the first ever Seder you've run by yourself, or that you've done this preparation for? Or is it a Seder that you're excited for because it's a time when I can just maybe focus on myself and not have kind of the concern and the worry and the anxiety of so many other people around me? And finally, what do you hope to happen for yourself at the Seder? Where would you want to be? Where would you want to be at the very end? So having gone through this process of storytelling, of experiencing, of reflecting, where do you hope you want to be? And again, this doesn't have to necessarily be an activity that you do. It could be an activity that you even send out to all of your family beforehand. Ask them to answer these questions. You could even tell them, maybe you could like send it to me on WhatsApp or via email, and I'll like have it on my phone or print it off, whatever, and read the answers as like right before we begin Seder, in addition to like other questions or other messages you may want them we may want them to represent. And we begin with that first cup of wine. The very first stage of the Seder is Kadesh, Kiddush, to make holy. And as I've mentioned to you before, the whole idea of Leil HaSeder is unlike anything else we have in the Jewish calendar. If you think to kind of other ritual pieces, whether it's on Shabbat or whether it's on Hanukkah or Purim, right? We have kind of a series of traditions, and we have a series of laws that we keep. There's nothing like the Pesach Seder, which takes you through an entire journey where you're compelled, because it's part of this whole process, to drink certain things, to eat certain things, to say certain things, to feel certain feelings. That's what the Seder is all about. And it begins with a glass of wine. And I want to try and maybe give some ideas. Why do you think, what is it about having a glass of wine at the beginning of a meal that makes it, this Seder night or any Seder night, special or different? Any ideas? Why a glass of wine? And then we'll get into why 4. But why a glass of wine to open everything up? And I want to share any ideas.
Wine usually loosens you up. So it helps in the beginning, especially when you don't have anything in your stomach.
That is
get a little Pepsi.
That is very, very, very true, right? It's always, that's like one of the I would not tricky, I could say tricky, of Seder night, of like you've already drunk 2 glasses of wine before you've really eaten anything. But you're right, like this bottom piece here, wine and passion, opening ourselves up, that in order to kind of tell a genuine and authentic story, to really kind of allow yourself to connect to this whole narrative, you need to kind of loosen up a bit. And there are other pieces there. There are other pieces there too. This idea of Kadesh, Kiddush, holiness, a question that you could ask people at your Seder, the idea of, have you ever felt holy? What does holy even mean? Right? That in itself is a question. Does it mean to feel special? Does it mean to feel different? Does it mean to feel separated? Right? A lot of these ideas are kind of spoken about in Jewish texts. My favorite kind of interpretation of the idea of holy is this idea of to separate out. Okay, we mentioned a Havdalah ben Kodesh L'chol, when we separate out 2 distinct times, one which is holy and one which is secular. But not only times, but things and spaces. Some are holy and some are not. The idea of making something separate. Beautiful piece here by Alex, similar to sanctification as we do on Shabbat. Excellent. We're setting the scene, we're setting the tone for the evening. Okay, the idea that we're going to now prepare ourselves to open up. And one idea, we're going to come back to this, the idea of 4 cups of wine. Each glass of wine connects to the 4 stages of the Exodus. The 4 stages, this one first is to leave. In order for the Jewish people, the Bnei Yisrael, to begin their journey, to start and move away from slaves, they had to leave. They had to leave the situation that they were in there and then in Egypt. And then again, we can connect that to ourselves. That we want to enter into a new space. We want to leave behind the isolation that we maybe have been feeling, the kind of the monotony of our existence of, I don't even know what day it is anymore, or the monotony of, I've binge watched everything on Netflix, and now what do I do? So we need to leave that space. We want to leave it behind, at least temporarily. We can come back to Netflix after. There's plenty of things to watch, I promise. Right? Tiger King, it's great. Sons of Until I Die, it's amazing. We can come back, but for the moment we need to leave. And so we're entering a new space. And the idea of having Kiddush, of having wine, allows us to do so, going on that journey, just like the Bnei Yisrael did. We then begin with the kind of very first strange, let's say, custom of urchatz and karpas. Yes, is that a question?
Now I'm learning about I'm so behind on this.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Oh, but I'm behind. No, I don't mean that. I need to know that, and I'm also behind on this. I'm behind on everything.
Wait, Natalie, you're talking to me?
Oh, no, sorry, I wasn't. I accidentally unmuted.
Oh, sorry.
also something else.
Don't worry about it. If I am...
The blessing for the wine, Borei Pri Hagafen, as we do on Shabbat, same blessing?
So I'll show you now. I'm going to open up now. This is the Haggadah. So I'll bring this over to show you exactly what it looks like. Here we go. So, different activities for kids, the Seder plate, right. So the blessing you would make because it's not Shabbat, and again, I can also send you a transliterated version if you want, which is kind of the Hebrew text written in English letters. You would just say this text here because it's on a weeknight. So it starts off with Borei. Let me zoom in a bit to make it, sorry, so it's a bit easier for you to see. You would say Borei Pri Hagafen, and then the rest of the text is a special blessing for Pesach itself, which I'm just highlighting over here. And then we end off with, here we go. You would add this you wouldn't add because it's not a Saturday night. And finally, you end off with Shehechianu b'kiyimanu v'egianu lazman hazeh. I mean, many beautiful ideas as to the significance of that. Going back to what I was saying before, we're planting ourselves in a certain time. That whatever the feelings we have around us, whatever we may have been doing up until this point, Higianu, we have arrived. We've arrived at this time. It may have been tricky, it may have not been easy, but we are here now. We're about to enter into Seder. So that's the blessing that you make. Again, this is the Haggadah I sent to you. They're really wonderful activities. The next piece is Orchatz and Karpas. Okay, Orchatz is the washing hands without reciting a blessing. The idea behind that, there's two reasons. The first reason is, in temple times, it used to be that not only before eating bread would one wash their hands, but also before eating, the phrase I've heard before, but it sounds really weird, is a wet vegetable. A wet vegetable that you would dip it into something, which is what karpas is. The second reason, which many of you may have heard before if you've ever been to a Seder night, is so the children will ask. That we do lots of strange, unique, different things on Seder just to engage the people around us. And I think sometimes, again, when I know that the different Sedarim that I've been to, it kind of can get a bit corny and a bit cheesy of like, oh, we're doing this differently and we're doing this just for children to ask. But I think the deeper idea of childlike wonder, like trying to go back to what it was like to kind of just be amazed, just truly in awe of the things around us for the first time. I mean, this is completely just apropos of nothing. But I was speaking to a student of mine who's watching Game of Thrones for the 5th time with people who have never seen it before. And I was having this conversation with her, and we were kind of both just with our mouths open, just, oh my gosh, how lucky are they that they get to watch Game of Thrones for the first time and be shocked here and shocked there by this event, by this event, and by this event. And it's difficult, right? Once you've already kind of become used to being shocked or being in awe of something, it's difficult to plant your mind, to plant your consciousness back to that time. And so, right, as Isaac has just said, the idea of just doing things because they're different, doing things because they're weird, in an attempt to bring back that childlike wonder. And as you can see from this Haggadah, at every single stage, there's beautiful insights. For example, Karpas, what aspect of the natural world gives you hope? What is the most hopeful place you have ever been? Right? The idea that Karpas, the idea of spring, the idea of new, the idea of things being special again, is very much a part of Seder. And again, you can think about these ideas now. I'll bring you back to the presentation. Okay, so I've just put in here just some extra points for you to consider. There is, again, says, as Isaac said, there's like a thing of washing your hands in a strange way, of either someone bringing a pitcher to the table, or you going to wash your hands, or someone else washing your hands. Any vegetable can be eaten as long as it's not bitter. Celery, parsley, onion, potato, that's great. Radish, I also like radish. Dipped in salt water in ancient times for purification. Also kind of symbolic of the Jewish tears and sweat that kind of happened to us. The idea of learning through doing, learning through tasting, that very first informal educational experience. Okay, and now we enter into maybe one of the most intimidating, sometimes can be maybe the boring part of the Seder. I'm allowed to say that, but maybe the part where this is what makes or breaks a Seder, essentially. Okay, this is what makes or breaks a Seder. So I wanted to start off before I go over to the Haggadah, and we can think of some ideas together. Perhaps is this line here. Okay, going back to the words that we're even using, Haggadah. Okay, the telling book, Magid. We're telling a story, and we are a character in our people's story, with our own chapters to write. To be a Jew is to see yourself as part of that story, to make it live in our time, and to do your best to hand it on to those who will come after us. That, for me, that's the rallying call of Magid. That it should never, ever be about just, reading whatever it says in the Haggadah and just kind of zipping through as fast as you can. It's seeing yourself as part of a story. That to be human means to tell stories. And so maybe I'll go back over to the Haggadah, and we can think of some nice ideas together, but maybe perhaps even together when we have this forum of people together, what are some ideas that maybe you've had before, either at a Seder or other ideas that you've had where you've been able or you've experienced this story come to life? Anyone want to share any examples? I'll bring it back over here so we can see each other again. What are some examples that maybe you've had before during Seder night, where the person either leading the Seder or the person organizing the Seder has tried and hopefully successfully allowed you to engage in this story of the Jews leaving Egypt? I mean, I'm very happy to shout. Once I feel bad that I'm always talking. I'll carry on. You can. I'll give you some idea.
Yeah. What was the question?
The question was: have you ever been to a Seder? Have you ever been to a Seder where there was an activity or something on the table that kind of brought the story of the Exodus of the Jewish people to life? And if so, what was that? What was that thing?
The only I've been at a Seder with the children, and then they were bringing, not the story of Exodus, they tried to dress up and like be the Israelites leaving Egypt. So that was like one scene that they were trying to act out, or I don't know how to say act. And another thing that they were doing was putting the plagues on the different, like small, like plastic frogs, or I don't know what else, on the table, in order to like demonstrate the plagues.
Beautiful. Okay, so that's number one. I think the idea of bringing a story to life is a really wonderful idea of giving people different roles to play, of playing games such as, I don't know what you would call it in not English, but 20 questions where you can put the character on the person's head and you have to ask them questions to guess who the character is in the story. We play a game in our house where everyone has cups of water on the table, and I kind of hide up my sleeve some red food coloring, and then when the kids aren't looking, I just sprinkle a bit of the red food coloring into the water, and then water turns to blood. And we'll go through those are some examples. Having frogs, toy frogs on the table is another wonderful idea. I want to come back just to one thing that I missed out, but it also does link to what we were talking about. Oh, Alex has said, telling stories of migration and immigration from the old country to the new. Beautiful. Okay, this we mentioned before, the idea of connecting this story, that it's not enclosed in its own time and place, but it's cyclical, right? We say at Seder night, B'chol dor v'dor, in every single generation, Chayav Adam, a person has to see themselves as if they were leaving Egypt. And it's not only were they leaving Egypt, but us as a nation, us as a people have moved from place to place. And so I go back to maybe the asking members of your family to either bring things or suggest items if they can't join you that represent liberation, maybe represent migration and immigration. Learning about where you come from and telling your family's story, your family's journey. Because in terms of the Jewish people, it all kind of began here in Egypt, but it definitely didn't end there. Beautiful, right? Masks for each plague, bringing drama and fun and engagement and activity to the Seder. I'm going to come back to here to the Haggadah. After we eat the karpas, I missed out. It's also breaking the middle matzah. So you have your 3 matzot, those threes representative of many threes that we find in Judaism, the 3 fathers, the priests, the Levites, and the Israelites. And you take the middle one and you break it in half. The best/worst dad joke Seder night is obviously which half is bigger. The answer being that you can't have a half that's bigger. Dum 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 dum. Dad joke. But again, also here you can see there's like some other, like, this is why I love this Haggadah in terms of who you're with or who you're sharing the Seder with. Ask someone to make a face like a matzah. Going back to, I think it was Isaac's point, right, of just doing weird, strange, different things to make it meaningful. Going to also to what Tamar said, there are people then who I know the people who kind of then will put that matzah in a backpack, and they will walk around the table pretending to be the Jewish people leaving. But also, again, if you don't have kids at your Seder, and maybe you wouldn't be sewing, like, it's not necessarily the right age group to kind of be putting things in backpacks and walking around the table. So go back and talk about the point Alex was making, migration and immigration, thinking and learning about times and places where Jewish people were told, this is what you can take with you, now you have to leave. Whether you're talking about the expulsion of Jews from France, from Spain, or the UK, or the stories from Jewish communities uprooted in Europe during the Holocaust, and linking this idea of separation, right? That we had to leave something behind, break the middle matzah in half, and we take it with us. We take it on our journey. There's obviously many pieces that we can speak about. I think Manishtana, one of the most famous, but also one of the most poignant for this year. Hold on a second, let me get to it in a second. Here it is. Here we go. There's no escaping the fact that this year is different. Right? This year is going to be a different type of Seder for us. And I think maybe that if you want to kind of gear a discussion to take place at Seder night, that the last few weeks, right? I tell you, I'm 32 years old. I would say for the last 31 years plus, like, minus however many weeks, when someone's asked me, how are you? Or I've asked them, how are you? That's like just the regular way to open up a conversation. Yeah, I'm fine, I'm good, not bad, it's great, whatever. And you don't really necessarily you have no intention to find out the answer necessarily. It's just a sequitur into any form of conversation. Maybe that's just me and I'm not very nice, but that's how I see a conversation. What's been weird over the last few weeks is, from what I've noticed, is the way that asking, how are you, has completely changed, at least from my personal experience. That now when I've asked someone, how are you doing? How are you holding up? It begins a whole conversation of, actually, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How is quarantine? How is it at home with kids bouncing off the wall? How is it that you're able to kind of, get on with your life? It has meaning. So the Manishtana, right? We'll go to the Manishtana questions, the songs, the song that you sing of these different pieces that we're doing that are different on this night that we sing at this point. But also Manishtana, like what is actually different now? How have you been coping? How have you been feeling? What a great time now that we can maybe just disconnect for a moment from everything else around us, not necessarily stress too much about what's going on in the world, to really ask the question, how are things different? How are you feeling? I think that there particularly, and I know that there's plenty and plenty of different things online at the moment of Passover during Corona and Seder during Corona and Haggadah during Corona. And that's obviously really, really important. But it's also important not to make the be all and end all and essential focus of your Seder on the troubling times that we're living in, but definitely setting aside a time. And I would personally recommend this time during the Seder to reflect on those pieces. If you go, and this Haggadah, which I've sent to you, has so many different questions for you to consider, different ideas for you to experiment with all the way through Maggid. Another beautiful example is the idea that the rabbis stayed up all night until morning discussing the Seder. And there's a brilliant question here, which is really wonderful, is what is one idea that you would talk about? Or what's that one time? Okay, many of us have had that moment, that person or people, they've just stayed up all night talking. What did you talk about? Who was that person you were talking to until dawn? So here, for the Seder night, they're talking about freedom. They're talking about moving from creating a new nation. But there are many, many moments where we've also experienced the idea of finding someone we connect with and talking to them. Maybe as part of your preparation for Seder night is to reach out to that person or to those people. But before Seder begins, who would be your dream Seder participants? And maybe you won't be able to share Seder with them now, but just even show some kind of recognition of, do you remember that time when we sat up all night and we were talking about the wonders and the infinite universe? We were talking about the deep inner meaning of Rick and Morty. I wish I could be there with you again, talking about those things. Because in essence, that's what also the Seder is about. So again, I won't necessarily focus too much on all these different pieces because I don't want to kind of bore you too much, but as you can see here, for all different ages, there are different activities and things for you to think about. Another one I'm going to point out to you, just one more, and then I'll continue on with the next piece, which is the next glass of wine. I'll also send you a different playlist as well. For many, many people, again, the idea of keeping engaged are the different songs that we can sing, either songs that we've sung as kids when we were growing up, or songs that we've heard more recently. For example, Vehi Sha'amta is a really, really great song. There's like a version by Yonatan Razel. I won't torture you with my singing voice, but I'll send also a playlist of different songs that you can use, that you can listen to and have at the Seder. Here's another beautiful piece. Hold on, I just skipped it for a second. Here we go. Okay. There's a piece here also, okay, and the idea of some form of journey. I mentioned at the very beginning of this idea that we have to begin, we begin a journey by moving from the state where we are in. There's another idea which I'll share with you in a moment, the idea of becoming unstuck from habits, and it very much relates to this. So on your journey, was there ever a moment when you felt helped perhaps by God? Was there ever a moment that you sensed a deep spiritual connection to something beyond? What was that like for you? And to maybe just to take that moment in time at Seder, when we're dealing with those deeper inner spiritual moments to ask yourself those types of questions, an almost form of meditation. The journey that we go on as human beings is one which is difficult for us to track. It's also one of the reasons why in Hebrew there's no word for history. We say historia, which is just an English word. And the closest word we have to history in Hebrew is zachor, to remember. So the only real aspect of our lives that we can kind of track are just our memories. But those memories, particularly the ones that are shared, is what connects us. And that's something which we want to try and remind ourselves. Coming back, also the 10 plagues. There are many, many different ways to make this fun and engaging and interesting. I also saw there's like some incredible stuff on Haggadot.com that I also sent to you as well, of like graphic novel versions of the 10 plagues that kind of bring it to life. So let me just come over here for a moment before I carry on. Any questions at all about some of the ideas, suggestions regarding Maggid? Trying to make it interesting, trying to make it personal. Those are the two pieces. And it all comes down to, again, it comes down to preparation. Any questions or concerns or questions relating to Maggid, or something that you would like me to go over or to clarify that maybe I missed out before we continue? Okay, good question. So I just asked the question: how much Corona talk is too much? I mean, look, it's a very, very personal. It's a very, very personal thing. Everyone deals with the current situation or any form of difficulty or troubling times differently. Some people prefer to kind of confront, let's say, Corona by talking about it often and by kind of just getting their fill of the 24/7 news intake. And on one hand, that is if that's kind of what allows you to compartmentalize what's going on and make you go on with your day, then that's good. On the other hand, just kind of engaging with it the whole time can also kind of make you weigh on you very, very much. And the idea is kind of getting on with your day, getting on with your life. I think that for many, many people, the reminder of our situation of having a different type of Seder is anyway going to be like overhanging shadow over the Seder. So I think for my Seder, I'm planning on like at that Manish Tana section of like actively engaging with how are we now in a different place, different time, and allow like an opening up that discussion. And then I'm not going to necessarily mention it, but you do what you feel comfortable with. That would be my own personal recommendation. Okay, also, excellent. And the question also of like thinking back to, well, we're told we have to kind of retell the story and relive the story, but how am I supposed to relate to being a slave? Right? How can I relate to that reality? Because in all honesty, I've never really truly tasted it. And the truth is, it appears in the Haggadah that I've sent out to you. Okay, for many, many of us, we're fortunate enough that we don't live in servitude. However, there are other aspects which we could definitely say that we are enslaved to. We are enslaved, or some of us are enslaved to perhaps to technology, right? The fact that when I don't have my phone on me, I feel like I'm missing a limb. Maybe that could be this idea that maybe now I'm enslaved to something. Or perhaps, especially now when we've been blasted into a different reality, we can begin to see some of these aspects of our lives that we either take for granted. Another idea is maybe we're slaves to our habits, to the characteristics, the things that we do, which we don't even notice that we're doing them. And how do we get away from those? It comes up later with the idea of matzah, but how do you kind of break out of a bad habit? And in some way, that I think is a way of kind of linking it to this day and age of, but is there something which we cannot escape, perhaps? Maybe it's a bit more kind of metaphorical rather than physical. You could even going back to Alex's point that, right, we're not slaves now, but we're not too disconnected either from people of our own faith or from other people in society who either were slaves fairly recently, historically speaking, or are still slaves today. And what do we feel about that? How do we manage that? Perhaps also the idea maybe of having that olive on the table as a reminder of, we hope for peace, but when and how can we get it? The excellent question by Rochelle. Is it preferable to ultimately is it preferable to read the Haggadah in Hebrew? Is it different than Tefillah? We should read the language we best understand. It's that second point, 100% all day, every day. The Haggadah itself, the telling of the story, the main purpose is to understand it. With prayer, with tefillah, okay, so there's this connection to the Hebrew text that connects you to the author, or that connects you to the people that said it beforehand in a different language all around the world. And although that is still very much present in the Haggadah, the ultimate piece, the ultimate goal is to understand. That very first entry into understanding the story. And look, there are some people who kind of will make a point to read the Hebrew and then read the English, or read the Hebrew with like translation on the side. But there's nothing wrong from in terms of gaining that achievement trophy of having done Seder. If you do it in a language that you understand, there's no need to do it in Hebrew. There's no such, I'm a big believer in no stupid questions. This is not a stupid question, but is it customary to attend shul before Seder, typically? So generally on festivals, there is like a prayer service that takes place in synagogue beforehand. That will, is not taking place this year. And there are certain prayers that are said, it's essentially the typical prayers one would say in the evening before going to bed. So that would include the Shema, and also the silent prayer, the Amidah, that has a special text for Pesach itself. Again, I can send that to you as well. But yeah, there is a custom to go to synagogue beforehand. This year, as you're not able to, you would start your Seder when after nightfall. And then Pesach Day itself. So Pesach Day itself is similar to like a regular Shabbat or holiday day. Spending time with whoever's like around you, enjoying the weather. The only let's say difference is, so you, rather than having a Shabbat meal or a festival meal with, let's say, challah, people would have it with matzah instead, and you would make kiddush. But it's just it's a holiday day. So it would be like, if there would depending if you were living in Israel, people wouldn't go to work. For people who don't use electronics on Shabbat and festivals, they also wouldn't use electronics on that day either. Okay, excellent question. So Natalie, there's no specific tradition for Sephardim to use electricity on Yom Tov. And people have their different observance levels of what they do and what they don't do. But someone who is observant of Jewish law, who is Sephardi, would also not use electricity on Yom Tov. There is, and this is important to say, there is particularly in this year a very fascinating article that was put out by Sephardi rabbis who said that you are allowed to use, if you don't use electricity on Yom Tov, that you are allowed to set up Zoom I don't know why Zoom became the thing. Whatever. Okay, Zoom. Okay, so let's say Zoom. Or Skype. Skype also exists. Why don't we use Skype? Before Yom Tov, before Chag, and kind of set it up and have it on, and then you could have your family from the other side of the world be a part of your Seder, and you could be a part of their Seder, and do it like that. So that might be where that piece came from. Thank you, Kate. Fine. Correct. I'll go back to Zoom. So that's maybe where it came from. There have been some other Ashkenazi rabbis that have said that too. We were planning. I'm just to give you a bit of a background of myself. I'm a modern Orthodox rabbi. I think that's a really wonderful innovation in terms of Jewish law that was sent out, because technically speaking, if you set it up beforehand and you just leave it on, you're not technically breaking, you're not using any electricity. And although traditionally rabbis may have said, well, it's not in the spirit of the festival to have a TV on or to have your computer on, we're living in very, very different times. And living in very different times, innovations in kind of ancient Jewish law are necessary. And that's where that may have come from. So excellent questions, everyone. So I'm gonna send this out to you anyway. We then have our second cup of wine at the end of Magid. I've put some questions in here of so this is another one in terms of if you ever on a date with someone, you're going out with a friend, I asked the question, what does it mean to have a second drink with someone? So Alex said at the beginning, listen, that first cup of wine, right? Oh, I'm not showing my screen. You're just listening to me talk. Here, don't look at my face, please. Look at my screen. Here we go. What does it mean to have a second drink with someone? That I thought it's a good question to ask, right? That first drink that you have either on a date or on Shabbat and a date, right? That's just the standard opener. But to then order a second drink, now you mean business. This is a good sign. This is going well. We're having fun. So there's something to now that having that second drink, again, as Isaac said before, doing something a bit different, a bit weird. We don't usually necessarily do that in such a formal way. There's another nice tradition where you shouldn't pour for yourself. If you're with other people, as a sign of being free, it's nice to kind of pour wine for each other. If you do happen to be alone for Seder night, I would, as a way to kind of interact with other people, maybe ask them to suggest what's their favorite wine, what's their go-to bottle of wine, their go-to type of wine, and have that glass of wine in honor of that person who suggested that wine for you, whether it's a Chardonnay, or whether it's a Sauvignon, or whether it's a simple rosé. And then that's a nice way to kind of connect to other people, because you're drinking that rosé because Stephanie just loves a glass or two of rosé. And that's what I'm having for my second glass of wine. Leaning and its meaning. I said to you before, I would totally do the couch thing. I think having Seder on the couch is the best move. But if you want to go to the table, again, leaning, the idea of being free, the idea of being comfortable. It should be a comfortable lean, not that awkward, I'm about to fall off my chair lean. You should definitely 100% be comfortable whilst you are doing it. This is what I mentioned before, a nice idea too, the idea of matzah. Coming back to the idea of also being slaves, asking the question, is there a habit or relationship that you need to reframe or de-stuckify, to remove yourself from? I think that we live in a day and age where, again, fortunately, we don't necessarily feel the physical force of slavery, but perhaps we really, really do emotionally and mentally feel sometimes that we are slaves. And again, that piece there is in the Haggadah itself, but it's in my opinion, it's a great way to reframe that question of what it means to be slaves to something. Next is maror, which people dip into the charoset, that sweet paste symbolic of mortar. I think now also, in terms of maybe a meditation piece that you could do, if anyone's taking notes, or you can watch this back later, is the custom to dip the maror into the sweet charoset is asking that question of, are there difficult moments either in Jewish history or in your life that looking back now have given you hope? What would you say is the greatest moment for the Jewish people in your lifetime, or just in terms of your life? That, like the tradition, right, when people dip the wine during the 10 plagues, so too we can't be completely happy that the 10 plagues were wrought on the Egyptian people because Pharaoh was human. The Egyptians were human beings, and we can't be completely happy that our enemies are destroyed because they are humans. The same thing on the flip side of, we shouldn't completely immerse ourselves in bitterness and sadness. Particularly now, this is an important point, that we always should try and find that hope, that tinge of sweetness, that tinge of happiness that comes along with bitterness. And that's a question one can ask yourself. Right now, when I'm eating this maror during a bitter time, what is it that gives me hope? What is it that, what can I find, whether it's from friends or family or through the news, that allows me to kind of want to continue on? Hold on one moment. Okay, another, moving on from maror is then korech, where we make the Hillel sandwich. In time of the temple, the people celebrating Passover would take matzah, they would take maror, they would take the korban pesach and make a sandwich out of it. And we kind of still do that today, but we don't have the paschal lamb because we don't have a temple to sacrifice it. And we use just maror and we use charoseh in matzah instead. And the idea is framing bitterness. Looking back, what was a bitter experience that ended up being important for your personal journey and growth? Those questions that we were asking before, right? Is there something in your life where you can look back and say, do you know what, where was it that things changed for me for the better? Excellent question. Coming back to her question, do we wear different kippot on Pesach as we do on Rosh Hashanah? That's a really, really good question. So there is a tradition, and I'll come back to the screen here. There is a tradition on Passover to wear similar clothes to that of Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. The reason being that this is also a time of judgment. That like Rosh Hashanah and like Yom Kippur, which are times when we are trying to connect to something otherworldly or something outside of ourselves, we wear clothes that represent that, maybe like a white kippah or white clothes to connect that type of spirituality. There is a tradition on Passover also to wear white at Seder. It's not the best combination with the food and the drinks that you drink, but you know, once a year. I mean, I'm sure now I've just got different, like just wine-colored stains and matzah stains on all the shirts I've worn over the Passover. But there is that tradition because of this. The nature of the Passover story is a transition for the Jewish people. I told you at the beginning the idea of a journey. The first, the Jewish people left, then they were saved, and so too we are also going on a spiritual journey by retelling this story. So whereas Rosh Hashanah, it's the shofar, Yom Kippur, asking forgiveness, Passover, it's retelling this formative moment for the Jewish people. I'm going to zip forward because we are running out of time, but I will send this over to you and I will leave some time for questions. Just a couple more ideas. Obviously the best part of Seder night is the meal. Low-key, everyone's favorite part. I'm not going to lie, the best part of Seder. There's like a ton of different exciting, interesting recipes. If you're into cooking, if you're into experimenting in the kitchen, I'll send this. You'll get this PowerPoint. But here we go. I've got to share my screen again. Did it again. Here we go. But low-key meal, best part of the Seder. I'll send you, there's hundreds of different recipes to try out if you're into cooking. Again, if you're not, there shouldn't be a stress. It can be any food that you enjoy. There's nothing you necessarily need to eat. Obviously, people like the classic matzo ball soup if you're Ashkenazi, or someone will tell me what the Sephardic alternative to matzo ball soup is. Labane, maybe. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But it's to have maybe there's recipes you want to ask your family to send you before. Another way of connecting to people around the world at this time. Obviously, the classic kids' favorite part of Safun, of finding the Afikoman. Another like classic example of a weird and wonderful thing we do at Seder to engage people. This again, if you're with people, then you can hide the Afikoman and go look for it. If you're by yourself, you could maybe just you could hide it in your house, and then maybe like before Passover or after Passover, like get your family or friends to kind of guess like where would be the best place in my apartment to hide the Afikoman, and kind of play like a virtual find the Afikoman. And like again, this coming towards the end, the idea of reflecting back of like the start of the story, the start of Pesach, us as a nation, us as a people were broken together. What better time now to focus on what brings you together? You're bringing that other half back, right? That's something which I think many of us could maybe find hope in. What's missing in our lives, and how do we want to try and find it again? Another really wonderful idea, we get to the idea of Elijah's cup, which we say after the grace after meals. And there's a really just wonderful kind of observation that we pour a cup for Elijah, but we do not drink it. We open the door, but no one comes in. The idea of being that sometimes we do things not because we expect necessarily anything in return. We do it because there's value in that process, just like Seder night now. There's some amazing questions coming in. I'm going to come to them in a moment. I'll tell you what, I'm going to because we only have a few minutes left, and I'll send this out to you. There's questions here which we can all reflect on, and I'll take you through the whole process of the Seder itself. One final piece, and then I'll come to the questions. There's hope at the end. Either you could focus on the idea of this Jerusalem moment. For those of you, hopefully you had the pleasure of being in Jerusalem. Is there a thing you've experienced in Jerusalem that could only happen in Jerusalem? So think about that, talk about that. Maybe again, ask your family members friends before, to write their Jerusalem moment before Seder, and then open them up when you get to this part to make it interesting, to connect to people who may not be there, but the idea that you're reading their personal thoughts can connect you to them. Okay, I'm going to come to questions, then we'll summarize everything now. I'm going to stop this share. Here we go. So questions from, let's see. Okay, can you drink Miriam's cup? Can you talk about that? Okay, wonderful question from Natalie. Can you drink Elijah's cups? The idea, there are different traditions that come with drinking Elijah's cup. Some people, it's a bit like the tooth fairy. That was when I was growing up, where my parents would just like kind of, they would pour it out and then tell me that Elijah came and drank it. And I believed that till I was about 26. So that was upsetting when I learned about that. Some people would use it for Kiddush the next day. Some people they'll use it for something else. There is the idea of also Miriam's cup. Okay, so the concept of Elijah's cup comes from, it's quite boring and technical, but the idea is that there's a discussion in the Talmud as to whether or not we should have 4 cups or 5 cups of wine. And the rabbis in the Talmud say that when Elijah comes, we will know whether or not to have 4 or 5. So we pour a 5th one, but we don't drink it. In addition to that, there's the idea of us we're waiting for something to happen. as it comes to as it relates to our redemption. So we pour that fifth cup, as I said in the presentation, and open the door in hope that the Jewish people will kind of have their final redemption. There's a beautiful, beautiful tradition to also have Miriam's cup, so to pour two different cups, because Miriam is, to some extent, the unsung hero of the Seder. It's interesting to point out that both Moshe's name and Miriam's name are not mentioned in the Seder whatsoever, perhaps to kind of not distract from your personal place in the story. But pouring out Miriam's cup, that Miriam was a key player in the survival of the Jewish people in the desert. So much so that, as the narrative goes, that after her death, the Jewish people fall apart. That before her, it was only after Miriam passed away in the story, in the narrative of the Bible, were then the Jewish people punished for having to wander in the desert for 40 years. While she was alive, according to many different commentators, she is what maintained not only the physical sustenance of the Jewish people, but also their spiritual sustenance as well. And so, as a symbol of that, people pour the cup of Miriam as, number one, as a way to, rightfully so, modernize and engage both men but women in the Seder as well, because as it's probably clear from the text, it's pretty man heavy, but also to recognize an incredibly important person. So I would recommend very, very much, if that's something, to have Miriam's cup, and it to be a symbol of Miriam's role in the physical and spiritual sustenance of the Jewish people as they left Egypt, as like a toast to Miriam, as it were. What are you meant to do with Elijah's cup of wine at the end of the Seder? If we don't drink it, where do we pour it? Excellent question. So for Elijah's cup, some people will use it for Kiddush the next day. That's pretty, I mean, depending on how good you feel about leaving it overnight. Some people use it for Havdalah at the end of Passover. Some people they'll pour it down the sink. In my personal opinion, it's slightly wasteful. So if you can cover it over, some people cover it over with a bit of foil or cling film, and then to use it for Havdalah the next day, I'd recommend doing that. If we're in Jerusalem for Pesach, how do we do anything different or special? We just want tons of brownie points. You just get tons of brownie points, Alex. You just get all the brownie points. There isn't necessarily anything special, other than it's pretty cool to say next year in Jerusalem and be like, yeah, well, I'm in Jerusalem now. Can I serve Elijah and Miriam the cheap wine? Says Natalie, great question. Can I give Elijah and Miriam the cheap wine? Yes, that's a great question, Natalie. You can give them the cheap wine. They don't mind. They're going to everyone's Seder. So do you know what? They'll be fine. You can give them the cheap wine. It's not bad. So I'm sorry that I've run over slightly. Let me just quickly summarize. I know it's been a lot of me talking, but I do hope there have been some ideas, insights, games, things that you can take to your Seder. I think going back to the preparation piece, trying to engage your families, asking these questions beforehand, sending them on WhatsApp groups, asking them to email you, send you on WhatsApp some of their thoughts and insights, and then maybe not allowing yourself to read them before and then bringing them out at Seder, I think is a wonderful, wonderful idea to all these pieces. I'll send you this Haggadah. I'll send you this presentation. That when we say on Seder night, Manishtana halayla hazeh, how is this night different? It really is, as I mentioned it before, it really is different. But know that what is separating all of us around the world is also bringing us together. There is an amazing, amazing insight into the fact that wherever we may be, however isolated we may feel, know that there are millions of people around the world sitting down at Seder night, will be asking those questions, will be drinking that wine, will be eating that matzah and maror, and hopefully we can be united in that feeling and in that sentiment. I wish you a happy, healthy Pesach. I'm here should you have any questions. I'll put my phone number on the group chat. I'll ask Tamar from Masa just to send you all the links and anything you may have missed. Thank you all so much. And I hope to see you all again at some time soon. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Take care.